Tuesday morning. Everyone as slow as slugs. I can bet you the A3 will be so blocked you can't get out onto it. There we go. That's better. Do you have a cruise control that takes up the slack? Well, eventually, like the old mechanical ones, always used to take a bit of time to get going. And then just a couple of seconds later goes, ugh, and disengages again. Yeah, that's a bit of a nuisance. Where are you going to start looking, do you reckon? Somewhere around the throttle body? What about those Bowden cables that run from the cruise control actuator to the throttle? Well, it could be one of those, it could. What about the module itself? Yeah, better make sure that hasn't got any dampness in it. But I'll tell you the first place I always check, brake lights. Yeah, this seems ridiculous. But you need the brake lights working for the cruise control to work. And I'll tell you all about it. Now, on the earlier models, that's E31, 32, 34, 36, 38 and E39, before the TUB engines were introduced, they all had an electromechanical cruise control, which actually pulled the throttle body butterfly open via a cable which went across the top of the engine. Now, of course, this was all designed in the 1980s, and 1980s electronics weren't seen to be the most reliable. What happened if the electronics suddenly decided you wanted to go 155 miles an hour? Okay, so electronics can be fallible, so there had to be some sort of fail-safe built into the system. And the way they did that was to add a clutch to the cable drag, if you like. So we've got an electric motor through a set of gears that pulls the throttle open, but there's a clutch in the way as well. And if you open the clutch, it's got a big spring and the throttle just closes again rather than being held open. Okay, so electronics control the clutch, doesn't it? Well, yes, it does, but the actual electricity used to use the clutch in the cruise control, its 0-volt return goes back through the brake lights. Well, that seems a bit strange, doesn't it? Well, it isn't when you think of it. If you press your foot on the brake pedal, brake lights come on, you lose the 0-volt connections to the cruise control, the clutch opens and the cruise control shuts the throttle body again. So it's not as strange as it looked in the first place. Right, let's have a look at the way the cruise control works on the V8s. Now, the V12s don't need a cruise control actuator because they're fly-by-wire. So all the adjustments are made electronically, whereas on the V8s and the straight sixes, it's done mechanically. Rightio, well, let's look at the interesting part to start with. First of all, on the V8s, under this engine cover is the main throttle butterfly. And we've got an actuator for that. So this bit of metal, I can rev the engine up using this, and I quite often do. And you can see that there's two cables going to it. There's one here and there's one here. Now, this one here goes to the throttle pedal. So it just goes out and through to the throttle pedal, whether it's on right-hand drive or left-hand drive car. So it's a mechanical Bowden cable. You press the throttle down and it will open up the throttle butterfly. So, yeah, absolutely nothing in the way there at all. Now, as I say, there's two cables going to it. One of them is the cruise control cable. So this one here goes round the back of the engine, back round here, out of that grommet, off we go, and to the cruise control actuator. And there we go, there it is. So this is the actuator. And it's got two things in it. It's got a DC motor, which can wind a sort of set of gears and pull the cable in. And it's also got a clutch, and the clutch is there for safety reasons. Have an electrical problem where the DC motor fails, just open the clutch and it will let go of the cable. Okie dokie. So how the system is working is there's a cruise control module, and what it's doing is receiving the speed signal from the rear differential on the E31 and from the wheels on other models, and that goes into the cruise control module. And when you press the stalk to actuate the cruise control, it measures the speed signal from the axles and saves that information. And then what it will do is it will close the clutch, it will wind the Bowden cable in, and it will start adjusting the throttle to maintain that speed. So how does the cruise control manage to get the throttle position exactly right so quickly? Well, we all know that the main throttle butterfly in these cars has a potentiometer. It's the TPS, or throttle position sensor. Well, the cruise control is always measuring that to learn the relationship between the amount of power the car puts out and how far the throttle body is open. Now, that's a fat lot of good if it's just pulling on a cable. Well, it is just pulling on a cable, but also, in addition to that, of course, the cruise control actuator has its own TPS, throttle position sensor, that's part of the actuator. So what it does is it works out the relationship between the two TPSs. And then it knows, because of course it's measuring the throttle position switch all the time. Excuse me while I get out of here. And we're out in the fast lane. Anyway, where were we? Yeah, the cruise control module learns the relationship between the actuator and the throttle body via the two throttle position sensors. So the next time, say we're just whizzing along like this, I put my cruise control on, it knows to open the actuator to a certain voltage from its TPS to retain the same speed. Of course, once we got up to this speed, then the speed control signal coming into it will tell it to either close a bit or open a bit the throttle to maintain the same speed. The initial movement of the throttle butterfly is done from remembered voltage of both devices. It's very clever, isn't it? Now, this isn't braking cruise control, which came much later. So if you're going down a steep hill, you won't maintain the speed. Now, the gearbox has a program specifically for the cruise control where it can adjust the gear changes in these sorts of situations. So you'll find out that if you go down a steep hill, it will try to slow you down by changing gear. It's only got a couple of gears to change though. If you're in fifth gear, then it will do fourth and third. And if thirds are not stopping you from going too fast down a hill, then yeah, that's all it can do. You're going to start breaking the limit that you had set. Of course, as soon as you come to a hill going upwards again, then the cruise control can do something. But by this point, it's a bit behind the times, and you find you get this little bit of seesaw, especially on undulating roads, where you start going up a hill and you slow down below the cruise control set speed, and then all of a sudden it'll put the throttle back on again, and then you sort of slightly go past the cruise control speed, and then it'll settle down. It takes a couple of goes for it to settle down. But yeah, that's one of the downsides of the analog system and mechanical using DC motor and clutches, is that it does sometimes have a bit of a problem keeping up. One of the other peculiarities is, of course, that when you set your cruise control, you've got your foot on the throttle, and you obviously got this throttle butterfly open to a certain point. Now, when the cruise control takes over and it'll pull in that cable that's right next to my thumb, what you'll find is the throttle pedal will go all limp. That's because the cruise control is actually controlling the throttle, and you'll notice, well, don't try and notice, but your throttle pedal will actually move up and down slightly with the demanded power from the engine. Yeah, it's a bit disconcerting when you get a throttle pedal that goes all limp. Now, of course, that all changed once you got fly-by-wire systems, and the E38 fly-by-wire system was the first proper cruise control I'd come across which used a fly-by-wire system. It was absolutely perfect. So yeah, when you set your cruise control, actually I'm going to set the cruise control to about 65 there, because it does cause an interesting thing, especially if you're just in drive mode rather than using Steptronic, is that it now knows where the throttle butterfly's got to end up, and it knows where it is to start with. So we press the end of the stalk, to go back to the same speed that we had it set for, it just keeps on opening the throttle up until it reaches that set speed. So here we go. Get down the gear. Oh, more. Oh, I turn the cruise control off. Yeah, it does tend to accelerate quite quickly in certain situations. Round a corner wasn't one of them, which is another thing to remember, of course, is that on corners, the ASC plus T tells the cruise control it's going round the corner, tells it not to put the power on. Yeah, it's quite integrated, isn't it, how it all works? We'll try it again when we're on the straight, I think. The trouble is you do catch up with the cars in front of you quite quickly. So we've got a cruise control speed of about 65. Set at the moment, we're doing 30. Let's put the cruise control on. See, I've let go of the throttle pedal. We've changed gear. Throttle's on. We're powering up. Still not fast enough. I have to turn it off, I'm afraid. We're approaching the cars in front of us at quite a rate. So I'll turn it back off again. Okay, then what goes wrong with them? Well, the most common failure is the gears in the device. And I'll put up the link for a repair document for those done by a defunct website called BMW540.com. Yeah, they've gone completely. It's a shame the actual author didn't put his name on the document, but there you go. Anyway, I'll put the link up. But that was written quite a long time ago, 2010, when the actuators were still reasonably expensive. And today they're not. They're really cheap as much. And they're very much available still. Used in so many cars as well. So many models use the same actuator. So yeah, they're very plentiful, easy to get and reasonably cheap. And that's the repair method used for that. Another failure mode of them was quite scary, but it wasn't of the actuator itself. And one of my friends, Pete, in his 740 had this problem. Had the cruise control on, and when he put his foot on the brake, it didn't stop being on. All he could do was turn the ignition off to stop himself. So yeah, that was pretty scary for him, that's for sure. And what the problem with that was that the Bowden cable outer of the cable moved when the cruise control was disconnected. So instead of the throttle butterfly closing again, the actual outer of the Bowden cable went backwards and then got caught. And it gets caught by coming out backwards out of the adjustment and then sort of dropping down and getting stuck there. Now, BMW did do a change to the clips holding on the two cables. The same could be true, of course, for the main throttle cable. That could come out backwards and get stuck. And in that situation, you get the same result, which is you get about quarter power on still. So yeah, it ends up being very scary. Now, BMW did a replacement clip, and what it did is clip the Bowden cables in position so the outer of them couldn't slip out. But I also noticed that I can't find that available anymore. There was available was an aftermarket kit which would replace the adjusters and the clips as well, and that would certainly hold it in place so that it didn't come back out again. So that was the fix for that. Of course, one of the other ones is, as we started off this episode, was the brake lights. Yes, if your brake lights aren't working or you've got the wrong bulbs in, and I have seen 5-watt bulbs put in these, in the brake lights, that stops them working as well. And that's the situation where the cruise control will engage to start with, and then it will quite rapidly disengage as the tungsten bulb heats up. So a 5-watt bulb takes quite a lot of current to start with, but as soon as it starts to illuminate, the resistance increases. That decreases the current in the clutch, and yeah, it goes off. Clutch, the cruise control just disengages. So yeah, that's it. And I found this out myself because I was experimenting using LEDs for brake lights, and I didn't like them for 2 reasons. First of all, they're much too bright if you got one that stopped the error coming up on the mid. But the other thing is they just don't provide enough current to keep the cruise control going. So yeah, that was another failure mode. Most other failures that you'd expect, like wheel speed sensors and the road speed signal sensor, is really something that which cause other problems. We've got a little slow one, so we'll let him past. There we go, we're out and into the BMW executive lane. We've of course got a car in front who's trying to keep in the BMW executive lane, but fortunately he's moved back out again, so we're all right. Of course, the module itself can fail. It's in the boot or trunk, and where you have a leak on the boot seal, trunk seal, then that can fill up the module with water and that'll stop it going again. Okay, final question regarding cruise control. Now, in the USA, you got cruise control as standard. So on all the V8s in the US, you had cruise control. In the UK, we didn't. We didn't get cruise control unless we asked for it. So the question is, can you retrofit cruise control to the old V8s? The answer is yes, but there's one part of the puzzle which is really difficult to find and is no longer available, and that's the loom. I have only heard of one person attempting to do this retrofit. There is, and I'll put a link to it, there is a retrofit manual for fitting cruise control on the V8s. I'll put you a link up to that and it will describe how you do it. And you'll also notice it describes one of the main cables which is no longer available. So that's sort of pretty much a dead end. And before I go, I'd like to say thanks for all the views. I'm up to 2.2 million now. That seems absolutely ridiculous. And it's just for a simple do-it-yourself channel. And all I do is mend my own cars and nothing else. But thanks very much for that, and keep the comments coming because I love reading the comments. Subscribe and put the thumbs up if it helped you, and I'll see you next time. We got that. I will be in no trouble. He was going too slow. Oh, there we go, we're out. Oh, it's nothing like a good blast on a Tuesday morning, that's for sure. And with the bloody car stuck in the fast lane, what's he doing? Right, let's go. He's seen a lorry ahead. Oh, a lorry. Oh, it's definitely a lorry. I'm going to have to go slowly past this lorry because, well, it's a lorry, isn't it? And if it's a lorry, that means I have to stay in the fast lane for at least 2 hours. I won't overtake it though. No, I won't overtake it. It's, oh, there's another lorry. I'm going to stay in the fast lane a bit longer. Yeah, there's another lorry about a mile away, so yeah, I'll keep in the fast lane just in case. Yeah, I'm only doing 55 in a 70, but no, that's fine. If it looks a bit like a lorry, then I'm going to stay behind it. There we go. There's a good row of cars in the left-hand lane. Now, can I resist going round the roundabout? Oh, it's just too slow. I'm going. I can't stand it any longer. Can't stand it any longer. They're just going too slow this morning. I have to go all the way round the roundabout. Oh, I've got some idiot in front now. It's not going to go. I can see that happening. Right, second gear selected. Come on, you can do it. Come on, get your epoxy S3 out of the way, for goodness sake. All the way round the roundabout. That's what we have to do first thing. People are just too slow. That's the trouble. There we go. There we go.